cooler than being cool. Joining us on Cool, 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 the podcast that explores intersections of inspiring technology, fascinating people, and captivating stories, or a combination of all three. So get ready to embrace your inner cool kid as we go behind the scenes with today's innovators and storytellers. I'm Cameron Kitt, founder of Yo-Yo's, You Own Your Own Stories. And today we have the privilege of talking to Dara Cook, the awesome CEO and co-founder of Expect Fitness, who has also worked as head of creative at the MTV Video Music Awards, brand manager of Nick Cannon's Wild N Out, and was senior vice president in business development. Dara, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Cameron.
We had a conversation that just blew my mind about the relationship between maternal fitness and maternal outcomes in birth. And so I want to just jump in by repeating something you said to me about being pregnant is like running a 40-week marathon. And would you run a marathon without training for it? Could you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So Duke University released a report that said being pregnant is similar to running a 40-week marathon in terms of the impact on the body. And when we think about pregnancy and labor through the lens of running a marathon, and when you run a marathon, there's a tremendous amount of impact on the heart, the entire cardiovascular system, your bones, your pelvic floor as well. So every system of the body is taxed when you run a marathon and when you're pregnant and undergo childbirth. So there isn't a city where you can sign up for a marathon without proving that you've trained for it. There's no major city, right? You think about New York City. In New York City, where we launched, you can't sign up for the New York City Marathon without proving that you've trained by taking certain approved races. You just can't come in and say, I did my own races, right? And that's because it's dangerous to run a marathon without that. So it is no surprise when we think about pregnancy and labor through the lens of a marathon that unfortunately we have too many of us who don't survive this race.
Yeah.
Why, unfortunately, some of us don't make it. 1 in 10 of us don't make it to the 26th mile because we're delivering early, right? And why so many of us, when we do make it over the finish line, we're hobbling over. We have gestational diabetes. We've had an emergency C-section because we have hypertension, or we've made it over and now we're depressed, right? So when you think about it like that, I mean, if you have been sedentary for 9 months plus, and someone says, okay, now today you've got to run a marathon, and here are the stakes. It's the life of yourself and the life of your unborn baby. Go.
This is the first day we're training, by the way.
Yes,
We've
and
told you to sit down,
yes.
not move for the last 9 months.
Right.
Something
Today
that really something that struck me is a friend of mine told me once that she was at some kind of event or at a friend's house, and then said someone told her that like pregnant women aren't allowed to drive golf carts, and she was like, "That's it. Like, why are pregnant women supposed to be encased in a bubble and not move?" And this idea of uterine strength, that like women who do move throughout pregnancy have a stronger body. I mean, and you mentioned, maternal mortality in the US has doubled in the last 20 years. I think that a lot of people are shocked to hear that this is not, we're not getting better.
Right.
It's not getting better right now. And so how do we fight that? So I wanted to ask you, Dara, can you tell me a story about a specific mom whose journey stands out to you?
Well, that specific mom is my sister, who she had her first child when she was of advanced maternal age. So what that means is over 35. And when you look at the incidence of maternal mortality by age, you will see that your risk factors shoot up the minute you cross that threshold of 35. So it's not just this arbitrary cutoff, right? That when you're 35, they used to call it geriatric pregnancy. That's out of favor now. But the data bear it out that when you get to a certain age, you're at a higher risk of all complications and you're at higher risk of dying in pregnancy. And my sister's OB-GYN, the great Rachel Villanueva, recommended to her that she exercise regularly to reduce her risk factors. Now, Dr. Villanueva is a brilliant physician, Yale undergrad, Yale Medical School. She was an athlete in college and continues to have a fitness regimen. She's also a fellow of the American College of OB-GYNs. And so the American College of OB-GYNs sets all policy for OB-GYNs in America. And the American College released a committee opinion based on years of research that said if you're pregnant, you really need to exercise. You're pregnant or postnatal, you really need to exercise at least 150 minutes a week. So she wasn't just saying this on a whim, right? This is what the governing body of OB-GYNs recommends as a standard of care. And my sister listened to her physician, and despite her age, she had a smooth pregnancy with no complications. I was there during the delivery. I would not have believed how fast it was were I not there. It was so fast that the OB-GYN was only in the room for 15 minutes. So when I say it was fast, there was no epidural even, right? It I
Wow.
always said if push comes to shove, if it came to shove, I could have delivered my niece. It was that smooth. And the OB-GYN who was on call that night, who delivered my niece, looked back at my sister as she walked out. And because there were no complications, she could just leave. And now the nurse took over, and she looked back at my sister and she said, "Did you exercise?" And my sister said, "Yes, Dr. Villanueva told me to exercise." And the doctor said, "I've noticed that women who exercise have labors like this." But again, thinking about this through the lens of the marathon, people who practice the most for marathons, on average, they tend to run them more quickly, right? If
Hmm.
I'm someone who has put in the bare minimum of practicing for the marathon, it's going to take me hours and hours and hours and hours. It's going to take me almost a full workday, right, to get through that marathon.
Hmm.
But if I've really done those, been very committed to performing these practice runs, then I can get through that marathon in a decent time.
Yeah, that's a really compelling statement to make to moms, because I don't think I've ever met a pregnant woman or person that says, I'd love to spend 12 to 13 hours in the, hospital and just having a really long, maybe 2-day pregnancy. Like, no,
Right.
everyone wants to have a fast, smooth. So that sounds like when you were in the room with your sister, it sounds like that was an aha moment for you, watching
It
how
was.
easy her birth was.
It was. It was. And I realized at that point that I had an opportunity to take everything I had learned at MTV and how to create amazing content and bring that into the maternal fitness space to make it easy for women to exercise and do so with top quality fitness content that is approved by OB-GYNs for safety.
I was gonna ask. I was gonna kind of introduce the brand a little bit. So I'm a fan of my friend's Peloton account, which I can only access at my parents' house. So I love logging on to it as
Yes.
opposed to say YouTube, which is where I do go to for a lot of
Mhm.
exercise, because there are no ads and they are high quality. So like I think there is really the sense of value of I have a place I can go that's a portal that's perfect for me, that has good content I like.
Yes.
And I think that it sounds like you said, okay, I have content production chops. Let me bring something to the market that women need that can help us survive this experience and have a better experience and strengthen our bodies. Let me ask you, Dara, what was maybe one of the biggest plot twists you've faced so far since you started Expect?
Well, some of the plot twists were the importance of the pelvic floor.
Hmm.
And we have doubled down on pelvic floor content. So, what happens when you're pregnant, even before you've given birth, whether it's through C-section or not, is that your pelvic floor is challenged, right? So you now have this, you have a baby, and that there's this new pressure, constant pressure on your pelvic floor, and it's just increasing over time. And one of the things that I learned that was fascinating from our amazing physical therapist, Dr. Nicole Dugan, who is one of the few board certified physical therapists in the country, that the pelvic floor activates first when we perform so many fitness moves. So it's your pelvic floor is that's what may contract before you, let's say, you think about some of the classic moves that people may do in CrossFit or something, do a snatch or something. Your pelvic floor is actually is activating first. And that pelvic floor health is such a major issue in this time. And so we did different tranches of content over time, and then when we did our last big shoot of content, we had our pelvic floor physical therapist design physical therapy grade pelvic floor workouts that were then approved by a urogynecologist. So, urogynecologist is a gynecologist who specializes in the pelvic floor. And this is meant to be preventative. So, you don't have to see a urogynecologist who may actually end up having to do surgery because your pelvic floor has been so challenged and so compromised that you may experience something called prolapse. And that's when your pelvic floor organs actually start to fall through the pelvic floor itself. So
Yeah.
this is about preventing that. How can you use physical activity to get ahead of that? And it's even also just about quality of life. So this is something that so many people have taken for granted. Sure, after my baby, every time I laugh, I leak a little. It doesn't have to be that way.
I know, but doing Kegels is so hard to remember. And I don't know if it's more. I remember this video my friend and I used to do. It was an Australian woman, and she would always say, "Let's tighten up those pelvic floor muscles." I would think about it all the time, and I was like, well, "Where? How?" Like, I know that it
Yes.
holds in female bodies. I know it holds all of our organs, but
Yes.
when you're giving birth, does the baby pass like through, or how does it? What is the role? Does it push the baby out?
Well, we have, so I'll tell you a little bit more about this product that we're launching. It's called the Pelvic Floor Rescue Program because so many women
I need.
actually, literally it's rescue. We had a different name for it. And I was talking to my co-founder and I said, this is crisis. I mean, people are
Mhm.
actually in crisis. I was like, their pelvic floors, they want them to be rescued. This is not just,
Mhm.
it's not a touch up. This
Mhm.
is, bring us out of crisis.
Yeah.
So, um, there's an exercise called the elevator up and down where you're really exploring the range of the pelvic floor to lift up and then to release. So in labor, you are a lot of that in a vaginal delivery is the release part of that, and so we have an exercise in there that addresses that, for example. So what's also great about our pelvic floor program is that it is applicable beyond this period of pregnancy and postnatal. This is good no matter what stage you're in. So even if you never have a child, the
Mm.
pelvic floor is important because at different stages, it's when you're going through menopause, your pelvic floor also has changes. When you're older and you may have hip issues. We had someone else in our company who had a family member, an older family member who had a hip replacement, and their physician told them to do pelvic floor exercises. And this is a senior citizen. It's this secret to orgasms, right? So
It's a lot of
so
benefits.
a lot of benefits to it that are beyond childbirth, and so
Mhm.
it's preventative. It can help you, or it can repair, it can rescue and repair if you're currently experiencing leaking, when you're coughing, laughing, sneezing, yelling,
Yep.
uh all this, just living life, right?
Yep.
Jumping, doing fitness, running,
I
uh
can't get on a trampoline. Like, I'm 34.
right.
I cannot get on a trampoline without a diaper on. Like, it is no longer accessible to me, and I love
Okay,
trampolines.
I want to send you the earliest. We're gonna send you the this. We're gonna send you the rescue, so you can let us
It's
know what you
applicable, right, to more than
yeah,
just women. And I have so many things that I want to talk up to you about. I really want to touch on something we had brought up in our first conversation. But
yeah.
first, I want to remind everyone that's listening that this podcast is brought to you by Yo-Yos. You Own Your Own Stories, a documentary storytelling company that demystifies cutting edge technology with emotional human stories. If you got a cool story to share, we can help you get it out there. So draw, I mean, first of all, this is such a good idea because it's you have a wider market that needs like I don't know a single woman that would say I don't need pelvic floor rescue. I remember one I had a urologist. I was like, "Well, how do you do Kegels?" And she's like, "At every red light." And I was like, I was like, damn it. I was
Right,
like, no one's like doing enough, right? My
right,
pelvic floor always is so weak, even though I work hard. But something you said to me in our earlier conversation was about when coming back to expect fitness. One of the challenges is that in order to have a really smooth birth and be active, you actually need to be starting that training a year or 2 years in advance, not like when you're 3 months along.
right,
Can you just like that sounds like it's like yeah, how do you identify that market and be like, are
right,
you thinking you might have a baby at one point? Time to start working out.
right. Well, to take a step back is that half of all births are planned.
Mhm.
So we tend to always just focus on, oh goodness, I'm pregnant, surprise, surprise. But when you, especially when you consider the IVF market, right? All of
Yeah.
those births are planned, right?
Hmm.
So from that standpoint, the data shows, look, it's important to exercise whenever you can, even if you're finding out if you've been sedentary. When you go on ACOG, the American College of OB-GYNs, when you look at their committee opinion, they say that even if you don't have a fitness habit, this is a good time to start one if you're cleared by your doctor, right? Because the actual pregnancy itself increases your risk of gestational diabetes, for example, right? And
Mhm.
fitness is very efficient at reducing that risk. So, for the half of us who are planning our pregnancies, who are trying to
Mhm.
get pregnant, there are a number of things that people do regularly, right? People take folic acid. They start taking prenatal vitamins before they're even pregnant. Exercise, if you don't have an exercise habit, this is also a great time to start that as well. So it usually
Mhm.
takes a while to get pregnant, especially if you're undergoing IVF. There's also research that shows that if you're exercising while you're undergoing IVF, your IVF is more likely to be successful and you're less likely to experience complications.
Amazing.
Certain types of IVF treatments increase your risk of developing hypertension, preeclampsia, which is a leading cause of preterm birth. So, exercising is a great complement. We argue it's a necessary complement to IVF.
Mhm. I mean,
So,
that sounds like a great way to at least find those people who are who are like identified as planning.
yes.
It's really powerful. I mean, I wonder about those, but gosh, there's just so much. I just think this is incredible. What really struck me was I had looked it up. I knew about your. I just said like, oh, fitness app. But when I talk to you, it's like that is the tip of the iceberg. Like there's so much more to this, to the element of like fitness, empowerment, health, survival. There's a lot that you guys are battling, and I think it's just amazing. So, Dara, my question for you as we are starting to wrap up is what do you wish what's one thing you wish people knew?
I wish that people knew that we all have in our hands by ourselves, we do have a magnificent opportunity to improve our maternal health outcomes ourselves. The conversation about maternal health in the United States has been dire, and it I believe it's led to disillusionment. We hear from our physicians that when their patients find out they're pregnant, they're excited, but they're also scared. They're scared because they've seen the headlines about they're everywhere from the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times to the top story on 60 Minutes that it's so dangerous to have a baby now in the United States, that women today are more likely to die from pregnancy complications than our grandmothers were, despite all of our medical advances. they hear stories of their friends. Most of us don't know, thankfully, a woman who has maybe passed away in pregnancy, but they hear about their friend who went into labor too early. They hear about their friend who had gestational diabetes, and now she may have type 2 diabetes, which she has to contend with for the rest of her life. And they're frightened. But there is an empowering argument, which is that there is something that you can do, that is to exercise, and you can do that. You don't have to do it with expect. You can walk, you can swim, you can just move around in your own living room, whatever it is. um, you can adopt a fitness regimen if you don't have one, and you can greatly improve outcomes for yourself and your baby.
Mm. It's about like taking control of your own birth and your
Yes,
own
it is.
pregnancy. And
Yes,
where there's just this kind of maybe leftover Victorian era spot, like idea that like when you're pregnant, you're just kind of like a sedentary lump that must be attended to. And like I think about prenatal yoga. It's like what you guys are doing is so much more than the prenatal yoga. It's like let's build strength, let's get cardio in, and like
right.
I think it's a really big shift. We're starting to shift. I think women are taking this stuff into their own hands, and such an empowering and positive thing to hear, right? It is really depressing, and the news loves it, right? They love to
But,
share how bad it
yes.
is, because it is bad and it's unacceptable, right? To be like
Yeah,
the U.S. and to be what 30th or
right,
way lower.
right.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think that that's just such an amazing message. And it's not just with expect, it's like, let's all get our friends working. I don't know. I have this image of like a woman riding on horseback. I don't know why. Like, why is that important to me? But like this idea of like empowerment, like movement, like you can do this, like stop. Yeah. Well, yeah. What would you say to a pregnant mom who's maybe hesitant to work out and hasn't had an experience of fitness in her
Well,
life?
pregnancy is power. It's the most
Hmm.
powerful time. Our one of our uh, workout leaders, Alex, she said, "I've never felt more powerful than when I'm pregnant, to be honest with you." And when you look at pregnancy through this lens of strength, you're so powerful, you're so strong, you can actually shepherd a new life into this world. Then when you understand it through that way, not at all are you this fragile being who cannot undergo physical activity. And how did we get here, right? Is for hundreds of thousands of years, people have been highly physically active at all times, including pregnancy, because they had to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Just
harvest wasn't done just because you're pregnant.
right, right. And just this idea of we've oddly heard from so many women who have said their second pregnancies were easier, not even just because it was their second pregnancies, it's because they were more active because they were running after a toddler all the time, right? If they
That's
have
interesting.
another small child at home. So this era of the sedentary, we're getting, just generally speaking, all people are more sedentary now than we've ever been. There are more reasons to sit down. There's more content than ever. Life is so much easier. I don't even have to go up and to turn my lights off anymore. I can tell Alexa to do it, and it'll
Yep.
be done, right? Even all these little conveniences that we have today, the fact that we have washing machines that my great grandmother did not have, right? And she had a washing board. That's physical labor, right? All of these things, right? Running water. I mean, you're thinking about through the ages, it has never been easier to be sedentary or more fun than it is to be sedentary than it is right now. The video games and the Netflix and all of that and the
Hmm.
Instagram. So we're not getting enough natural organic physical activity. That means it's even more important for us to schedule it and put it in our lives.
I always think when I do farmer carries, I think about like my ancestors carrying water, and I'm like, isn't it
Right.
funny that I'm like cosplaying what my ancestors did for like hundreds of
Yes,
thousands of years, which is just carrying
exactly.
water. Like that's
Exactly.
what we used to do forever and ever, and now I'm like pretending. And I think about that a lot. Like I'm like, oh, like we're pretending, but it's like we know how deeply important it is for like all areas of health, and just really bringing it into women's health. Dara, what would you say, since this is kind of technology podcast, what would you say is your biggest, maybe more outlandish view of the future, especially in women's health? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think That's such a great question, Cameron. I think what's going to happen in the future is that it's not really outlandish, is that, but it may be outlandish now, is that we will have more female founders, women founders, creating solutions for women. There was uh, some disturbing data that came out of, I believe, the UK that basically said that uh, femtech companies that were founded by men, they are at higher valuations, that get more institutional capital than femtech companies that are founded by women. And I, that's going to change. I think when we think about creating value and super serving your customer, it's the companies that understand their customers the best that win. And in this space of women's health, which has been just ignored anyway for decades, um, and now there's finally some attention, but a lot of it is attention through the male founding team. That's going to shift.
Hmm.
And even just outside of women's health, McKinsey released a great report about underrepresented founders that said that uh, founders who are not the typical, male founding team actually return higher, have higher returns for their
Yes.
investors.
Yes.
And so it's a business decision too. Um, as things are interesting with the economy. Money used to be so cheap that you can make mistakes by only investing in male founders. You can't make those mistakes anymore, right? You have to be really judicious and think about where are your best opportunities. Women founders tend to be more capital efficient, right? And so you want to look at that. They may in women's health, they may have a more visceral understanding of the consumer. They are the consumer. And so I think we're going to actually see women founders in women's health do very well,
Yeah.
which is
Couldn't agree more.
actually not, which is, it's sad that that's not even the case today.
Yeah, but you're right. Like, just from like a capitalism perspective, what you said was so true. It's like the company that thinks and understands the customer the most does win. I think about Spanx. Like, no man would have ever invented Spanx, but
Right.
a woman who needed them did, and then it became like. And so I think slowly, unfortunately, we are going to continue to see. I think the other factor there is that there's just more women in roles of power in business in general, right? So
Right.
like as pregnancy becomes a factor that will affect companies more, as opposed to the Onion article that said company offers woman permanent unpaid leave for her for her pregnancy, right? Which is just
Yeah.
called firing. Dara, I'm so sorry, we're out of time. My last question is, who do you think would be a phenomenal guest on the show?
Who do I think would be a phenomenal guest? I think actually I'm a visiting entrepreneur at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and I work with some amazing founders there. And that's what I was going to say. What I see in terms of the future is, when I was coming up, women in business schools were so much the minority, and now we're reaching parity. And so even just in terms of the pipeline of who's coming out, I think there's several students there that I think might be very good, and people that I've worked with through Stanford. So yes, I
Fantastic.
think they'd be fantastic. So I gave
I'm
you
so
different
excited. Yeah,
options.
from one female founder to another, I really love what you're doing. And Dara, I just like really appreciate this. So thank you for listening to Cool, Cool, Cool. I'm Cameron Kitt from Yo-Yo's. Huge thank you to Dara Cook from Expect Fitness for joining us and sharing her incredible story. Check out the show notes. We'll have a link to Expect Fitness's page and, of course, Yo-Yo's website. And let us know what you thought of this episode on social media using the hashtag Cool, Cool, Cool podcast. Dara, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Cameron.